people will join as they do. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us, and welcome to the American Indian and Alaska Native Tribal Opioid Response webinar series. My name is Jeff Ledolter, and I will be your point of contact for any tribal opioid response technical assistance you might need. You can find my contact information in the contact and support box on the lower left of your screen.
Excuse me,
this
Jeff?
Webinar is brought to you.
Jeff,
oh, yeah?
Excuse me. You're fading in and out. I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Huh.
Is anybody else being fading in and out?
Yes, it
Sorry about that. I'll try to speak a little more clearly.
No, there could be a connection issue. I'm not sure.
It does sound like a connection issue, I think, because when I it's crackling a little bit when I hear you speak too, Shirley. So I'm not sure.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll try to keep going here. But
Okay, do you think we should go through the rest of the slides, or should I keep going?
Just keep going.
Okay. I'll make this brief. This webinar is brought to you by the National American Indian and Alaska Native, ATTC. We are part of the ATTC network, which also includes 10 regional centers and a network coordinating office. Our network, our center is a NADAC certified educational provider, and we'd be happy to provide you with CEUs for this webinar. Just contact me using the contact information provided. Immediately after this webinar, you will be redirected to our GPRA evaluation. It aims to ask us to evaluate our events in order to provide performance assessment and accountability. The survey asks about how you are satisfied with this event and will take less than 5 minutes to complete. Completing these surveys helps us keep bringing you meetings like this one, and we would all appreciate you taking the time to give us some feedback. You will be muted for the duration of this webinar. Please use the chat pod to share your questions and comments, and we will address questions at appropriate points during the presentation. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Shirley Kane, who I think you can all see, actually, on your screen. Shirley?
Yes. Thank you, Jeff. Before I start, well, one housekeeping item. I apologize that Dennis Histon cannot make it this morning or this afternoon for the first part. He had something that came up that he just had to do, and he's going to do his best to come back toward the end of the webinar. So, but in the beginning, it'll be Colin that he'll be, doing the majority of the webinar. But before we start, I want to say a prayer, and I have my my tobacco holder. It's actually Kinnikinnick, and it's Kinnikinnick that I picked from the Red Willow. And it's a traditional, we call it traditional tobacco, and that's what I'm going to use to offer up a prayer. And I'm doing this primarily because we still have people who are involved in substance use and also with mental health issues. And then we also have a lot of uncertainty, and we have a lot of fear in the community. And I also have younger friends that have talked about feeling lost. And so I wanted to offer a prayer so we can bring balance and bring serenity and work together in unity so we can do our work and do our best at life and also at helping one another. Gishimanidu, Mashkasi Koyajini Kazo, Mizi Dodem, Kagmini Zagagan in Dunzaba. I want to say Gishimanidu, Miguch for all that you bestow upon our people. Miguch for our life, Miguch for our health, Miguch for everything that you give us, the earth, the land, the water, the air, and our fire. And Widokawishin Anishinabeg. Widokawishin all of our people in a good way, that we can come together in unity and not have the negative feelings that are out there and help our Mother Earth to heal too, Bimadiziwin, in a good way. I've been reading and hearing that Mother Earth is sick right now, and because she's sick, our people have become sick as well. And so we need to help each other, Mother Earth and our people, to get better. And so we can get better by being positive and by keeping our wits about us and by supporting each other in a really good way, Bimadiziwin. And we wish for all of our workers out there from the tribes and from the urban areas. And special prayers for all of our people who are still doing direct service for our people out in the community. And we wish for Colin and all the work that he does and his helpers that he has with him, his supporters. We wish for that work. And special prayers for Dennis too and what he's going through. And we wish for all that he has done for our communities as well. We wish for all the people at JBS and at the University of Iowa and for all their support and for their help. And I offer this to you in a kind and humble way. Okay. So the next order of business is introducing Colin. And I have his bio, so that's what I'll be reading is his bio, and it's really awesome bio. He's got an awesome experience, and Colin is the co-founder of Sober Squad, and which many of you, especially in Minnesota, know that it's a grassroots organization. It came from the people. It came from our community, and it began in Mille Lacs. And he's a tribal member of the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. He currently works at Mille Lacs as a grant development specialist, and he's worked at Mille Lacs as a community service leader, DNR land maintenance administrator, and culture ground maintenance keeper. He is currently in college at Central Lakes College in Brainerd and is working towards his bachelor's degree. Congratulations, he's made the Dean's list as well. He has training from the Wildland Fire Academy, Wild Variety Facilitator Training, the Landon Leadership Program, Minnesota Recovery Connection as a recovery coach, and a certificate in tribal administration and governance. He has conducted numerous speaking engagements ranging from the Minnesota Indian Institute on Alcohol and Drug Studies, also known as MAIDS, and the Minnesota Association of Resources for Recovery and Chemical Health, also known as MARCH, to college events. And we good Colin for joining us and for presenting. And I give you Colin Cash.
Hello, Buju. Me good Shirley. Can you guys hear me pretty well?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm just gonna just keep powering through here because I'm having some trouble hearing some audio. But I'll just keep moving forward. Okay. So again, my name is Colin Cash. I am the co-founder of Sober Squad, which is, like Shirley was talking about, is a grassroots organization that started in Mille Lacs and Mille Lacs Indian Reservation, and it grew from there. And now we are there's 25 different chapters in 5 different states. And our membership is close to 6,000 members. So this is going to talk about what it was like in the community and what happened and how the community banded together, started Sober Squad, and reached out and offers basically kind of like on-demand peer support for individuals with substance use disorder. So the sort of like this little philosophy that that we've developed with Sober Squad is to empower and support individuals in recovery to build healthier communities. And so how this came about was I had a epiphany one day sitting in a 12-step meeting on my reservation, And I just realized that there was all this untapped potential sitting in this room of dedicated people willing to step up to the task of what was going on in our communities. And so tapping into that resource, I started lifting other people up that were in recovery to help my community. And that requires everything from support to training to events, and it just blossomed once we tapped into that resource of other people in recovery. There's this this little thing that I believe, and I believe that there is no greater value on this planet when it comes to people with substance use disorder than somebody else that's in recovery for substance use disorder. So using that philosophy and empowering other people in recovery, whether they had 1 day clean or 30 days clean or years clean, how can we all come together to address the issues that were going on in our communities? And so that's kind of like how it initially started. And so like these are a list of the first a lot of the founding members that started this journey with me. Again, my name is Colin Cash, so next to my name it says an idea born from a narrative. And I don't know if Gary's on this phone call yet, but he was but then he started showing up. And an idea born from a narrative, nurtured with the help of the community, and then shared action with an idea powerful enough to change the world or dent the world. And Tashaya was one of the first people to take Sober Squad off the reservation, and she is just an awesome piece. And I don't know if they're going to be joining. I talked to them earlier. But those were the first initial core people. And so to kind of give a frame of reference for people to understand what, I don't know how to explain this. So our reservations are statistics don't do my community justice. Mille Lacs Indian Reservation has high numbers of out-of-home placement, has high numbers of drug crimes, felonies, low graduation rate, very high unemployment numbers, and this is not unique to just Mille Lacs. This is happening in a lot of different other reservations or communities that are hit with poverty and historical trauma and everything. And so back in July of 2016, because Minnesota is a Public Law 280 state, that means that jurisdiction for my reservation falls on the county. And so our officers, our tribal officers, get sworn in through Mille Lacs County, the county. And so there was this joint powers agreement that gave our tribal officers the right to investigate and arrest people, and that's where their jurisdiction came from, was getting sworn in through the county. And so in this joint powers agreement, it gets renewed every 25 years. And in July of 2016, Mille Lacs County did not renew the joint powers agreement for our tribal officers. And so basically we had 32 officers that couldn't arrest, couldn't investigate, couldn't do their jobs in my community that's already hit with historical trauma and drugs and crime. And so now you're pulling the 32 officers from that community. Things took a very dire turn instantly. And so there was, for the 2 years that there was no joint powers agreement, during that time in my population of 1,400, there was 25 overdose and deaths and one fatal police shooting and 2 homicides during them 2 years with no joint powers agreement. And it was looking back on it now, I'm realizing that was a very traumatic time for me and my community, because I was trying to help my community and help reach out people and trying to start this grassroots movement. And so a lot of the 25 overdose and deaths, I interacted with a lot of those individuals during that time. And so realizing doing direct care during that time, it had a profound effect on me. And I didn't realize it until after a year after that, when talking about it, that I noticed that my voice started getting shaky, and it was just a really traumatic time for me during all of that, and I didn't realize the significance of that. So a little backstory of Mille Lacs is that we get a tribal per cap payment the first Thursday of every month, and so we get $933 the beginning of every month. And with no cops around and the crime rate up, major drug cartels and gangs started showing up around the first Thursday of every month in my community, and our police were inept to do anything about it. And so drugs and using and gangs just came out to the open. And I remember during this time in front of the bank and the grocery store that we have on my reservation, drug dealers just started pulling up, parking in the parking lot and serving drugs right out in the open, just right there in front of the grocery store in a public place. And you can always tell during that time who was the drug dealers because they had really nice cars, and their cars stood out, and they would just park there. There was a lot of traffic going up to them, and they knew the first Thursday of every month. And our police were unable to do their jobs, and so the very first week there was a fatal police shooting from county officers coming onto the reservation that aren't familiar with the reservation. They see the data, they see the statistics, and so they come in fearful. And so then within the first week of the Joint Powers Agreement getting pulled, the county sheriff shot and killed a 19-year-old kid. So that was the start of it. And then there was 2 homicides and a lot of overdose deaths, and the drugs, everything just became apparent to the forefront. And there was a lot of elder abuse, and it was a very traumatic time. And that is the environment in which the community responded. That is the environment in which Sober Squad was born in. So when the Joint Powers Agreement got pulled, I remember thinking, well, if the cops aren't going to do anything for our community, then that responsibility falls on us. Just like it was back in the day, the community took care of each other. And so when the worse that it got, the more the community started to respond, and which is I say the best lessons come from the struggle. And so our community was in dire need, and so Sober Squad sort of emerged, and I was blessed to be at the right place at the right time during that. And so then that was like the breaking point. So you had the Joint Powers Agreement got terminated, fatal police shooting, 2 homicides, 25 overdose deaths in 24 months. And this is just a population of 1,400 people, which is not a very large population for this type of activity to be going on. So, and during that time, I started drawing inspiration from a lot of different outside resources. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the American Indian movement, how organized they were all across the country, and you know, like and that was the start of it. And then there was the Honor of Awe, the story of Alkali Lake. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it was a group of people where there was like a 90% alcoholic rate going on in their community, and a group of people, a small group of people, got sober through the 12 steps, and one of them eventually got on the council and started changing policies and went to a voucher system for people, and it drastically changed their community from a 90% alcoholic rate down to almost nothing. And so that was a huge inspiration in Indian country. And so there was a story of Alkali Lake. And during when there was a no joint powers agreement, I went out to Standing Rock, and Standing Rock was a powerful experience for me because I was witnessing 500 some tribes come together in unity and witnessing the power of the human spirit, and it was just something to see. And this is while my community is suffering, I'm experiencing all of this stuff. And then there was this guy named James Cross that started Natives Against Heroin. And this guy was going to Little Earth projects and going to the drug houses and going to the worst areas imaginable, and pushing back against the drug dealers that were selling in our communities, and was calling them out. And I was so moved by what he was doing, watching him stand up to drug dealers in our communities. I was just like, I was inspired. I remember thinking that if he is willing to stand up and fight in the worst possible places, like the Little Earth projects down in the cities, which is high known drug activity, and he's up there, he's got his hand drum and he's drumming, he's calling out drug dealers for selling stuff, and I was just like, wow. I was like, look at this guy standing up to the drug dealers. And so that was part of the inspiration. And during this time, I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and so watching, seeing something that worked for me, along with all these other inspirations that were going on around all of that stuff, it was just like it was all starting to come together in 2016. And one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to recover out loud. I didn't want to be anonymous. Like in 12-step programs, you're taught to be anonymous because of the stigma and the things that are associated with being in recovery. Like there can be a lot of shame and guilt associated with some people dealing with substance use disorder. And so and I remember making a decision. You know what? I am not going to run from this. I am going to take this head on. And one of the things that I wanted to use to take this head on was use social media. And at the beginning of this time, it was just little old Colin Cash on Mille Lacs trying to make a difference, and he was alone. I didn't have the community. I didn't have any of that stuff. And so I wanted to sort of use my social media as a beacon of hope for other people to reach out to, and to push back against stigma, to show the access points to Sweat Lodge, to support groups, to Wellbriety, to cultural events. I just wanted to start advertising all of this good stuff that's already in the community. And so I started advocating for people to come join out in me and Sweat Lodge, and I started advocating for people to show up to support groups or 12-step groups or Wellbriety, and I started advertising all of these support groups that were going on in the community. And at that time, there was just me and one other guy that was hosting these support groups, and it was just me and this one other guy for doing all of this stuff for a whole year straight in Mille Lacs during this drug epidemic, and nobody was showing up. Nobody was, like, once in a while I'd get a few people that would show up for a sweat, or somebody would come test out the waters of a 12-step group, and some just kind of see what's going on. And And so like pretty soon, because I was so vocal, other people then started reaching out to me for help. After a year of, I remember that first year I was hosting 4 support groups in my community and nobody would show up. I would sit there for a whole hour, 4 times a week. Once in a while I'd get somebody to show up, but I would sit there and I would advertise it on Facebook, hoping somebody would show up. I would be reaching out to people that were talking about going to treatment or talking about they were sick of stuff, and I was just really combing social media, finding people that were interested in recovery. And I did this for a whole year straight, and nobody was biting at first. But then after a year, one person started showing up. That was Gary. Gary showed up. He was the first one to show up. And then another person started showing up. And then another person started showing up. And pretty soon, these support groups, which was nobody was attending for a whole year straight, people started coming. I started making it okay for other people to seek recovery. Started changing social norms around recovery. And I remember that whole first year, I got ridiculed and teased so much. I was like getting called every name in the book. I was getting called, even racist terms and derogatory terms, and people were just like, oh yeah, we see you doing good, Colin, but it'll only be a matter of time before you come back. And so, but our little community that started in Mille Lacs, it started growing and growing, and more, pretty soon, these 12-step groups and Wellbriety and sweat lodges, pretty soon we just had droves of people showing up for sweat lodge, for drum ceremonies, for just like all, and started doing, during that time, because my people were dying, there was still a lot of overdose deaths going on this time, and I just wanted to curb that in my community, because in my community, these are my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my brothers, my sisters that are dying, and so I just wanted the dying to stop. So then I started, because like AA kind of indoctrinates you into an abstinence-based program, I had to sort of unlearn all of that to help my community and start doing harm reduction stuff, which was so pivotal to the outreach that was going on. And so our little groups started just like taking off. We started, and then so there's a photo on the left up here, the center left right there, where that parking lot where drug dealers were just pulling up and selling drugs. We just set up a booth right there and started advocating for recovery, and I started handing out clean needles. I started handing out resources. I didn't attack the drug dealers or anything like that, but I would just say, hey, you guys need some help. Hey, there's the sweat lodge tonight. Hey, there's doing this. I never called them out for what I wasn't doing what other people were doing about drug dealers. I came at them with an approach of compassion and love. I was like, how can I help you? I can't. The only way I knew how to help my community is help them gain access to recovery. And so that was the template of where I always came from. I always came from, how can I invite them into what I am doing here? And I got ridiculed and teased a lot, and I got pushed back a lot. But that was where the harm reduction stuff really helped. And so we started setting up a booth right in the parking lot, started handing out resources and all these really hot spots for crime or drug activity. We just started just setting up, handing out resources, and this is just the community's response. And then we started doing smudge walks, where we would take our medicine, our sage, and we would hold signs that said drug-free, we're here for you, we love you, and we would smudge all of the worst parts of our community walking around, just groups of us. And this is after a while, after our Wellbriety and our sweat lodges and all these different access points that we were advocating on social media started growing. And so the first Thursday, we started calling it Per Cap Patrol. And then I got into one of the most fundamental components that helped me and helped Sober Squad was the education component of the peer recovery support specialist. Now, that was so game-changing to me and other members that this is of Sober Squad, because we didn't know what we were doing. We were just like we were trying all kinds of different ideas, figuring out what works, what doesn't, how can we do this. And then when we went through the peer recovery support specialist training, when I went through the peer recovery support specialist training, it was like a validation, like, hey, what I'm doing is actually a billable service. I mean, not to whatever, but like I was like, hey, they're actually teaching a course which I learned just through trial and error in my community about the advocacy and the outreach and the harm reduction and how to invite people into recovery and not tell them what to do, and helped hone the skills with the motivational interviewing, and it just really cemented and gave me confidence to really push harder in my community after I got the peer recovery support specialist training. And that was so pivotal to me. And so then the support groups are taking off, and one of the biggest things that we did was like, how can we get organized in our community here for transportation? Transportation is a huge issue all across every community. It's a big barrier. And so we started volunteering, bringing people to meetings, bringing people to events, bringing people to treatment, bringing people to detox, bringing just any forward momentum. We covered that gap with transportation, and we started, and this is all, keep in mind, this is an all volunteer basis. None of us were getting, we weren't getting compensated gas, or we weren't getting compensated at all for the work that we were putting in. It was just, we wanted to see our community get better. And there's some sort of, I hate to sound cliche or cheesy, but there is some sort of spiritual significance to a group of people volunteering to bring you to detox, bring you to meetings, to bring you out to Pizza Hut, to do all this stuff with you and not get paid for it. That sends a very clear message to the person that is seeking recovery that they matter. That it's not about the money while we're out here. This is, and so many times, like, people ask, like, why are you doing this? Like, you get ridiculed and you get teased and doing it. Why do you keep continue to doing this stuff? And when you're not getting paid, and I would say I only want to see my community get better. That is it. And I'm willing to step in to do what I can to make a difference. And there wasn't really nothing nobody could say to that, you know, and so and we started advocating for different cultural events. We started speaking out at all these different events, because what we started in Mille Lacs is starting to grow in these events, and people are coming into Mille Lacs at night to see what's going on with Sober Squad. What kind of sane person comes into a cesspool of crime and violence at night to see what's going on? And so that was when I had that epiphany I think it was a well-variety meeting or something. I remember seeing all these people sitting in this group, and I remember, look at this untapped resource here. How, like, they're helping me with smudge walks, they're helping me with advocacy, they're helping me with transportation, they're helping me with all of this stuff like that. There is this huge untapped resource that is available for after the continuum of care stops. You know, after 5 o'clock, after you go through treatment and then a halfway house, and you come back into the community, you have that continuum of care, of that level of on-demand peer support long after your resources or your funding stops, which is a vital component, because they say the brain development in recovery takes about 2 years for you to get back to normal. And if you're stopping services at, let's say, 3 months or 6 months, you know what I mean? You're seeing a significant drop in the data and statistics of people that are in recovery. And one of the beautiful things that's about with Sober Squad is all of the first 10, 11 members of Sober Squad that are out here doing this, we are all IV users. So data and statistics says, hey, you're not supposed to be doing this. You're not even supposed to be alive. And so and not only that, but in a hostile environment. So all data and statistic basically goes out the window. And so then we started getting organized. And we started getting T-shirts, we started getting coats, we started giving presentations and speaking out, doing a lot. Then we started growing, not just in Mille Lacs, but started going to other communities as well, showing people what recovery looks like. And we started advocating for what we need, what resources do we need. And there's this saying that I love, and it's like either you have a seat at the table or you're on someone's menu. And one thing about with us with Sober Squad is we pulled up a seat to the table. We started talking about what resources we need and what we need as people or people in recovery, what our communities need, and we started advocating for that and getting out there and not being ashamed of being an addict or a junkie or a person in recovery or what, we just started shattering that stigma and forming together. And so like having a community and having that connection for people on after they leave halfway houses or outpatient, or that they still need that care long after the services stop. And so that's sort of where Sober Squad started filling in them roles. And so how this I love this saying, and it's you cannot solve a problem trimming around the edges. Now our communities they need a lot of resources and they need a lot of help, and you can't just do little stuff here and there to solve the problems that are plagued in our communities. And so one of the things that how we started helping people is first it always started with harm reduction. Harm reduction is such a vital component to forming a connection, to getting people the resources that they need, even though they may not be ready for abstinence or anything like that. It's just like, so it starts always, for me, it started with harm reduction, handing out clean needles, handing out Narcan, just anything to stop the curve of the deaths that were going on in my community. And so like I had to undo all of this stuff that I was taught in a 12-step program of an abstinence-based program, and started meeting people where they were at. And so that's where the Minnesota, the peer recovery support specialist training gave me the tools to start meeting individuals where they're at and give them resources for where they're at, not where I want them to be. And that was such a vital component. So it started with harm reduction, and we started doing a lot of outreach and advocacy, like with the smudge walks, reaching out to people. We did a lot of work down in the Wall of Forgotten Natives, and then so when individuals are ready, we got to strike while the iron is hot. So through all the harm reduction efforts and the outreach and the advocacy, then people started reaching out to us, to Sober Squad. And so the very first thing we always did was help them get into detox. Now it's easier for people to get assessments and beds in the treatment and keep them safe while they and alive when they reach out. So when they reached out, the first thing we did was always like, well, are you willing to go to detox? And if they were willing to go to detox, well, we'd bring them to the ER, because that's the only way we could get them into detox is if we brought them to the ER. And we would sit with them for 3 hours until a bed opens up to detox. And during this is such a vital component or a vital piece to people's beginning journeys, because people are scared. they're making life-changing decisions and they're scared. And so when they reach out and they're going to this unfamiliar territory, having somebody that that has been through recovery, that has gone through everything that they have gone through, sitting with them while they're waiting to get into bed and to detox, and sitting with them and telling them, hey, you're doing a good job. I know this is scary. I know this can be a lot for you, but you are doing a good job right now. I've done what you are doing, and I know it's scary, but it'll get better. This is just only the first step. And so sitting there was 8 people that I brought to detox, and there was 3 people that I didn't have the time to sit with them for the 3 hours waiting for their bed to detox to open and their blood work to come back, and so I left. And one of them 3 people died, and the other 2 are still out back. I went back out to reuse, and so, but yet the strange thing is the 5 people that I sat there and with them in detox, waiting, toughing it out that 3 hours till 2 in the morning, and going home, going to sleep, and get up and going to work again. Then 5 people that I went and sat and waited for them to get into detox are still in Sober Squad and doing well today. You know, so like that initial contact and forming that connection and giving them the support early on is a key component. And so when they get out of detox, then we would find a volunteer or somebody in Sober Squad to pick them up from detox and bring them to treatment, inpatient treatment or residential treatment or whatever. And we would even, if they were close by, we would even go and visit them. And so I can't remember that reporter who said the opposite of addiction is connection. I can't remember the reporter guy that said that, but that is so fundamentally true, because when we've got people in the treatment after, so we send them to detox, we pick them up, we bring them to whatever treatment, because transportation is hard, so we'd find volunteers and we'd throw a little money together to find gas money to get this person from detox to treatment. And so we'd pick them up, bring them to treatment, and if they were close enough, we would come back and visit them while they were in treatment. And we'd tell them, like, hey, you're doing a good job. We believe in you. Hey, maybe we'll bring you some shampoo or whatever like that, you know, just taking care of each other. And when they leave treatment, we go and pick them up and we bring them back into the community and we help them with housing or whatever. What I did my whole first year, where there was 4 support groups a week that I was doing. Now I don't host any support groups, but now there is a support group or tribal or ceremonial event or something going on every single day of the week here in Mille Lacs, and other Sober Squad members are stepping up. And so that way, when we pick people up from treatment or detox, or not treatment, and we bring them back into the community, there is some recovery event or something going on every single night of the week. And that's why I say you cannot solve a problem trimming around the edges. And so when these people, when our relatives leave inpatient treatment and they come back into the community, it's important that we give them something to look forward to every single night of the week. Keep them focused. And so Sober Squad sort of became the glue to all of the whole continuum of care, from the beginning, from harm reduction to outreach, and then to detox. And then while they're going through all these services, we're advocating for them, and we're right there, and we're bringing them back into the community. And so all of this stuff just happened from, I wanted to make a difference in the community. I wanted to help my people. I wanted to give back. And so like this model that happened, it just sort of worked itself out. And it didn't come from theory or anything. It was just through trial and error in Mille Lacs. And so, so here is some of the stuff that so on that top right photo, there's a picture of me in a van with the two brothers that are behind me, that are sitting directly behind me. One of them is my cousin, and one of them is my nephew's dad. And both of them guys died during the during 2 years with no joint powers agreement. You know, and I look at that photo a lot. You know what I mean? Like if I'm sometimes I get frustrated or I have a hard time, and you know, it's important for me to take breaks, yes, but I think about, you know, why am I out there putting myself out there so much, or why do I get ridiculed, and why do I get teased, and why do I put up with this? And I look at that photo, and then there's another photo of my son on the bottom right there, and my son is gonna grow up in this community. My son is gonna live here, and hopefully his kid is gonna live here, and his kid's gonna live here, and for generations to come, my family lineage will be here in Mille Lacs. And what kind of community do I want to leave my son? You know what I mean? Like, what kind of, I want him to have as many opportunities as possible. I want my community to be safe. I want them to change the social norms that are going on in the community. And so, like, I am not going anywhere. My community is not going anywhere. And so there's and there's an awesome, beautiful saying that comes to mind. I can't remember who said it, but it's like, in order to change the world, all you need is a small group of dedicated people. And tapping into that resource of people in recovery and giving them the training with this peer support training, it can just drastically change outcomes and help the drive the data and statistics of what's going on in our communities. And so Gary was the very first guy to show up to support groups and just stay. So and I wish he was here to talk about his experience with what it was like, to give a different perspective of his point of view of what happened with Sober Squad. And so, like, there's a picture of Chris Kelly on the top right. She was my instructor for the peer recovery support specialist training, and which is a vital component to the tools that I utilize today. And so Gary was one of the first trainees and everything through this. And so we've gone out to California. We've seen a presentation by Gabor Mate, and we've really come a long way. There's Gabor Mate right there up on the top right. And so we started hosting these events that started growing on other communities, and the turnout for these events is just amazing. Like, we're having, like, you know, close to, I think the event we had up in Duluth, or Fond du Lac Reservation, we had 400 people show up, and of other natives in recovery. Well, it's not strictly just natives, but majority were natives. And Randall Sam was one of this is a picture of him when I first brought him to detox, and I talked to him, and it's okay for me. I told him I was going to be talking about him here today, but this was how he looked when I brought him to detox. He was an IV user as well, and I sat with him. He was one of the people I sat in the ER room for I think for this one, I think it was 5 hours, not 3, but I stayed there the whole time. And then I brought him to treatment. And one of the things that he said helped him the most was the cultural component. He started getting involved in singing again. He started coming to sweat lodges. The cultural component is what really worked for him. And I remember the first time after he got out of treatment, I brought him to a well-variety meeting, and he said that was the first time he sang and drum in like 20 years, and he just really took a liking to it, and it really brought it out. And so here he is hosting. These are the bottom center picture is a well-variety group, which for a whole year straight, I was sitting there doing it alone, waiting for people to show up. and there is a group. This is just one night of the week that's going on in Mille Lacs here. And then there was a Christmas party we had up on the top there with Santa, and we gave out food. And this is all just community coming together to showing support. And then there was a part where Randy made a decision to where he said, you know what, I'm not going to be afraid anymore. I am not going to be controlled or degraded by this. And so it took a lot of courage for him to start speaking out in the community. And so like he just became a massive powerhouse. And then again, it's back to empowering and supporting other people in recovery. And that's all I've been doing. And I've been doing it for just a short period of years, just a couple years. And already the impact is just really significant. So this is the Friday night Pizza Hut that every Friday night we split the bill and we go to Pizza Hut and those, like, it's and the left there, I think that was when it first started to taking off, and then the two right pictures are some recent pictures of what it's like. And so our smudge walks, and we had a 4th of July party. We started doing some parades, just really like advocating for recovery. And Tashaya, she was the first person to start a chapter in Brainerd, the Brainerd Sober Squad chapter. And these are some Minnesota Walk of Recovery. And there's a video is not playing right here, but there's a video of us all yelling Sober Squad, and so I guess the fundamental component. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Shirley.
Hello. This is Jeff. Yeah. Okay.
No,
good. I lost the call just for a bit.
Yeah, and yeah. So the biggest thing or component through all of this is just empowering other people in recovery, because like long after 5 o'clock or long after people end their services with outpatient or whatever like that, they still need a community. They still need that connection. And then so that's kind of where Sober Squad stepped in and filled these shoes. And so yeah, that's kind of a quick little run through. If anybody has any questions or anything.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Colin. It looks like we have a question. Thank you for sharing your story. Will you be doing this again? There are a couple people I think this would be helpful to understand how important wraparound services are. And actually, I think I can answer that question. We are recording this webinar, and we will be posting it on our website later this week. So this conversation is being recorded, and we will be able to provide you a link that you can send to any of your colleagues.
Yeah, and I apologize if I didn't use the correct jargon or language. And I do, today I train other peer recovery support specialists through Minnesota Recovery Connection, and I still advocate for services and find funding and I'm not so much doing the direct care day-to-day anymore. I'm more doing like the paperwork side of stuff, which is ugly and a bureaucratic ugliness, but it's still good.
So, Colin. Shirley.
Hey.
I think there's a question there from Pam. So what she's asking is, when they come out of detox, do any of the people that you've worked with, do they do the math?
Yeah, I forgot to add these slides, but so dealing with stigma in our community is already tough as it is. But it seems like within 12-step programs or sort of these abstinent-based recovery programs, there's a lot of stigma around the people that get MAT. And so there was a period of time in Sober Squad where people that were on MAT just didn't reach out. They didn't come to us. They didn't do that. So I started reaching out to them. And so, so like when the doing the outreach and the harm reduction stuff, I'm always advocating heavily for people to get engaged in the MAT. And even if when they leave treatment, I'll bring them to the clinic to get on MAT, and there is a percentage of people that are in Sober Squad doing really awesome today that are on MAT, and they've been on MAT for years, and I love them, and they're my friends, and they almost need more support than other people because they're dealing with more stigma than other people. And just normal, I don't mean normal, but like, yeah. But yeah, MAT is huge.
Okay, so you're working with people who are on it?
Yep.
Okay, so I have some questions. How do you all work with people to help them get jobs? And then what about people who don't have skills? Is there skill building? And then parenting, and then what about counseling?
Okay, yeah, so we it's part of our training as peer recovery support specialists is we just bring them resources and let them do with it as they want. So we've developed this vast network of resources locally to Mille Lacs, and every single Sober Squad chapter knows their resources best. And so so like this is gonna sound kind of whatever, but if they're really active in Sober Squad, it's really easy for them to find volunteers that will help bring them to work every day, that'll help them with parenting classes, and we're always advocating for services. And so a lot of us are in therapy. We talk about therapy, and all of that stuff. It just makes the group sessions a lot stronger, and so it's sort of like we made it okay for seeking help, and we advocate. Number one thing that we do is we advocate for services. We advocate for the Mille Lacs Band Health and Human Services. We advocate for the MAT services. We advocate for therapy. We advocate for basically any resources in the area to make it okay for people to seek out these services. And so there's a DOL program here in Mille Lacs that we like to refer people to. It's kind of like our go-to, because even if they don't have all the necessary requirements to get a full-time job, they can still go to DOL, Department of Labor, and start building career skills and admin skills. And that's how I got into fighting fires of the DNR many years ago when I was in early recovery, was through the day labor program. So I advocate for any resources locally, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
It looks like there's also a question. Any advice for talking to folks who are very abstinence-focused? I have some pushback even from folks in long-term recovery.
Yeah, so they're changing conversations around MAT has almost been a skill we've been honing through the past couple of years as well. So I don't know, the biggest component I've utilized to help people understand it is to have them come out with me and do the harm reduction and the outreach. Because like I don't know, it's because the abstinence-based people are just not educated with it enough, and so just educating them and giving them experience on what it's like and how to form them connections and meeting people where they're at. And so luckily everybody in Sober Squad does a lot of outreach, so the pushback hasn't been that severe here in Mille Lacs, but in other communities off reservation, the abstinence-based people really push hard on the people that are in MAT, and that's why I say the people that are on MAT, they need the services more, in my opinion, because they're dealing with more for them just wanting to seek help.
Okay, thank you for that. And the question, can you connect the MAT to a chronic disease for the abstinence-focused people?
Okay, can you connect?
I think the comparison that we've found being pretty successful is comparing opioid use disorder to diabetes. Denying someone their insulin for treatment of their diabetes because you don't feel that it's a valid illness, I think really strikes a chord with people and helps them understand the mindset of people with opioid use disorder.
With the absence, and some conversations that I've had with people in Sober Squad about MAT was like, I try to have them envision the whole community moving forward, not just, and I try to tell them that, or show them that there are 21 million people in recovery today from substance use disorder, and only about 7 million of them attend 12-step groups. So 12 steps, it's very efficient, but that is not the only pathway. Like people use culture, people use education, people use religion, some people use therapy, and so like when the thing that helps me understand it is like if I want 100% of my community to get better, there is a percentage of my community that MAT, and it's the only route for them to live the life that they want to live, I guess, is the thing. Yeah, the social distancing thing. So we, like I said, we use social media a lot, and so since this social distancing thing started, we have Sober Squad members doing online Zoom meetings, 12-step meetings, sobriety meetings, and we have a live speaker every night every night now on the Sober Squad, and plus the Zoom line meeting, the Zoom online Zoom meetings every night. So we are really just like people are on it. Hello?
It looks like some people are having trouble hearing the sound. So you
Hello?
said that. Hey, Colin, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're cutting in and out.
Oh, sorry. So you said social media was a big part of part of the community and organizing the community. Did you use primarily Facebook or email or some other platform?
Yeah, so the biggest online presence we have is through Facebook. And did you guys catch the part about the online meetings and the live speaker every night and other things that we're doing, dealing with this social distancing too? So,
Yes.
and we have every chapter of Sober Squad. Like I said, there's 25 chapters in 5 different states, and every chapter has its own Facebook page and group chat. So we just plug people into these group chats that we have, and there's like social workers in there. There's marketing people for treatment centers, and there's so like when people need resources or having a tough time, they've been utilizing these group chats that are connected with all these different people all over the state.
Awesome. Okay, is there anything else? You getting any other questions, Jeff?
That's the last that I see from the chat.
Okay. So can I add something about abstinence-based?
Oh, please.
Okay. So this is what I know about people primarily that are abstinence-based. And I have to confess, up until a few years ago, I was too. I was very convinced that abstinence is the only way. And what changed my mind was going to the harm reduction conference in Whitehurst. And once I went to the conference and I just learned all the information about harm reduction and how much it's needed in the communities, and it also stops the judgments that our communities have about our people that are using. It's just, a whole wealth of information that communities can learn and then share with other community members. And I think it's a lot with abstinence, is a lot with people who've been in AA or who've been in recovery for many, many years. And I think with the harm reduction, it's a relatively new concept in Indian country. So I think it's going to take time for that to build. So just knowing that from my own experience, and then I think Dennis Hiskin is another one that speaks well to abstinence-based, and then also how he changed his mind as well after working with the MAT program in Whitehurst, or in the women's and the moms program. So I just wanted to add that about the abstinence and then the MAT.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. It looks like those are all the questions that we've gotten for today. As a reminder, this will be available online. We'll be sending a link to the recording of this so people can watch it again if they like. I want to thank everyone for joining, as well as Colin for presenting and sharing his story. Shirley, Colin, is there anything you'd like to say to close?
I just want to, yes, absolutely. And I just want to say miigwech to Colin for doing this webinar and sharing it with all the people who came online and phoned in. I know it's really, there's a lot of, like I said in the beginning, there's a lot of uncertainty about what's happening in our world. And I think with these kind of webinars and with the kind of engagement that you're doing, and it's all social distancing now. And I think there's even a powwow that's a social distance powwow that I joined online. And it's awesome because people are bringing hope to our people who have to stay indoors and have to stay home. And we're all part of that, community. So miigwech everybody for doing your part. And miigwech everybody.
Colin, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate it. And, miigwech.
All right. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, and stay safe.
You too. Later.